A lot of people are bringing up the ATF thing because essentially what they're calling for is going to make a lot of Americans felons, just like the kind of bump stock ban that passed through Donald Trump that was just ruled unconstitutional. So other than the courts, is there any way to effectively lobby the ATF? Is there any way to stop them from essentially making legal law-abiding citizens felons overnight?
Well, one tool that we got in these negotiations over the Speaker of the House is the reinstitution of something called the Homan Rule, where you can zero out the funding for a particular bureaucrat. So, like, imagine if you could have just isolated, like, Fauci's salary and zeroed it out and forced a vote on that. Couldn't do that before. You're now going to be able to do that. I suspect that some of us in the Second Amendment caucus will be visiting the bureaucrats at the ATF with that tool.
I'm looking at what's
smiling.
What's the rule called? The Homan?
Homan Rule.
How do you spell that? H-O-M-I-N, is it?
H-O-L-M-A-N.
Oh, Holman.
Yeah.
Holman.
Oh, man, we didn't even talk about Fauci. Is he well-loved in Congress? Is it divisive?
What's his next gig? University president, big pharma CEO,
Pfizer.
podcaster.
He's going to be the CEO of Pfizer. How can he not, right?
Yep. Something like that.
Yeah.
Would you hire Fauci if you knew that no matter what job it was, he was going to be spending like 20 hours a week in congressional depositions?
I think he got a deal. I'd be willing to bet, like so many of these other officials who have this within this revolving door system, he probably cut a deal a long time ago. That when he's out, they'll pick him up.
Speaking of the revolving door, another one of the like ethics things that I just don't understand how it's not the law now. If you are a member of Congress, you should never get to be a lobbyist or a registered foreign agent. But it is like two of the most frequent jobs that people get when they're done with the job I have is literally being a registered agent for a foreign government or influencing people for money. And I don't get why it's not like a total common sense thing to say, like, you've got to choose one path or the other. Like if you want to go be a foreign agent, and if you want to get paid money to influence outcomes, then that means you don't get to be one of the lawmakers.
Yeah. Right. I believe it was Joe Rogan a couple months ago was interviewing someone that was making the claim that members of Congress were getting different kind of treatment for COVID than the rest of the general public was. Do you know if that's particularly true? I know we talked about this.
Yeah.
Do you remember who the guest was? Because I can't remember that off the top of my head right now. But that was the accusation. Is that accusation true that Congress gets a different kind of healthcare system than the American people do when it came to COVID?
Nah, man, we're like, most of us are on the DC Obamacare exchange.
So you got Obamacare.
I got Obamacare.
Did you get COVID?
What's up with this? I hear like members of Congress sleeping in their office.
Yeah, more than 100 of the 435 members of Congress, when they're in Washington, D.C., actually live inside of their office. And I did that until I met my now wife, and she made it very clear that that was not an arrangement that she was going to be tolerant of.
Just because they want to save money?
It's the money. I mean, a lot, though no one should ever worry about members of Congress and our economic standing. I mean, people who have, maybe a spouse that doesn't work, that's raising a family, maintaining 2 residences on a congressional salary is challenging for some people. I mostly like Airbnb it because I have the like Yasser Arafat theory that you never want to sleep in the same bed twice.
What's this thing I'm hearing that y'all are getting a $34,000 raise? Is that true?
No one's told me that.
There was an article in the Daily Mail that said that one of the last things the Democrats did before the end of the last session was put in a raise of $34,000 for members of Congress.
I'm unaware of any raise, but if that's true, the margaritas are on me after the show.
Elon Musk probably is going to like to hear that the members of Congress are sleeping in their own office. But there's
a lot of rodent activity at night too, because they're always working on that building. Wow, pay bump.
There you go, man.
To ask you about,
could give.
Oh yeah, no, that's a per diem. Congress was like weirdly cut out of the GSA per diem, and so that would allow Congress to access the GSA per diem,
which is like while you're working away from home, that'll be your budget.
Right. So if I bring an employee from Pensacola up to Washington to work on a legislative issue for a week, they get a per diem, but we don't. So this would equalize that.
I was going to ask you, what do you think about what Elon Musk is doing with Twitter? And do you think there's going to be any kind of retribution against him, since he did expose how essentially the intelligence agencies were pretty much running big tech social media? Is there going to be like some bureaucratic investigations? Are they going to try to take away some of his funding from some of his spaceships? How do you think that's going to
You already saw Chris Murphy call for reviews of the different foreign investors in the Musk Twitter deal. So it's not a question of if that will happen. That is happening now. It's just a question of the level of acuity of it. And you know, there's so many of my Republican colleagues that are like, yay, you know, Twitter's ours now. Elon bought Twitter, rah, rah, you know, wave the pom-poms for Elon. And I'm glad he bought it. I'm glad Twitter's more of a democratized free speech space. But like, is this what we have to wait for? That we have to wait around for some like right-wing billionaire to come buy stuff so that we can have a playground? I just don't want to live in a world where the terms of service on social media become more important than the values that undergird the Constitution.
Right? Yeah, it's a cultural question, though, right?
It just seems like it seems so low T to sit around and cheer on Elon while like we are the board of directors of the most powerful country in the world and we do nothing while the digital marketplace of ideas is zapped of any conservative thought.
Yeah, I don't think relying on any one guy is the right move. It's because his emotions can change his behavior. We say he wouldn't let Alex Jones back on because he's like, no, I don't like what he said about kids, about Sandy Hook stuff. Like, but at least like you see John Astor. John Astor started a story in New York. I mean, he just bought the entire, I don't know the exact history, but because of one billionaire or whatever he was worth, we have Astoria. And like we have communities, like one rich guy can build a community. It's a little culty, but it's kind of like the history of our species. I don't know if we need that. Like, I think that we can legislate away the problems sometimes, but a lot of times I think it's in the private sector. I don't know. Like, the government's really good. What I really love the government for is to tell us when something has gone too far and to stop it from happening, as opposed to making all these things happen all the time. Like, that's up for the populace to do.
Yeah, but wouldn't you agree that these tech companies getting more power than most of the governments that have ever existed in all of human history is that threshold where they've gone too far?
Yes, it's gone too far. It needs to be broken up in a way that I think needs to be novel. That's
and
why.
So then the dispute among some working on the issue is: do you use like the force of law to break them up, or do you like almost do what happened to the tobacco companies in the '90s, where you strip their immunities and then sick the trial lawyers on them?
Well, they're still acting in the benefit of a lot of government agents. So I don't see them being put in check until they stop actually taking the orders from government and not doing what the government really wants them to do.
And the people who would be litigating against them in court want their next job to be at big tech. You know, I mean, the revolving door is kind of a consistent theme of our discussion today. But look at how many people go working from FBI, DOJ, CIA, NSA, and their next job is in Silicon Valley. It's a huge percentage.
Yeah, if you remove the immunities of what they did in the tobacco companies, then you're thinking maybe what happened is they won't prosecute properly because they want to get jobs there, even if they don't have immunity.
What I've seen so far is that the folks at DOJ want to be like just enough of a parasite that never kills the host. So, you know, they want to be just enough of a pain where they maximize their own economic value to then go and work for the big tech companies afterwards.
Man, that's a good question. Would we use the government to break it up or just strip their immunity and let the law take its course?
And this is the issue that Jim Jordan and I disagree on. You know, guy, as we've talked about, I have tremendous respect for, but he prefers more of a judicial route and I prefer more of a legislative route.
I prefer the government stop controlling big tech social media and stop manipulating the platform for their own personal benefit. That's me. And I think if we stop that, and we also have to understand government allowed these companies to have a monopoly on the market. There's no way to even compete against them because of the unfair advantage that they got from members of Congress, and whether it's tax incentives, whether it's Google Maps getting the data from the U.S. military, there's so much of them just working hand in hand that I don't even see the big difference between big tech social media and the government sometimes, to be honest with you.
Well, big tech is owned by someone. Like government, at least, is we the people. But I do.
But they're still acting like a vehicle for the private state.
No, Matt. Is it still we the people with government?
I think members of Congress should have to wear the patches of their PAC and lobbyist donors, like NASCAR drivers have to wear their sponsors.
Yeah, I think Bill Hicks made that joke originally, and he was prophetic, and I absolutely agree with him 100%.
We should do like an augmented reality VR app or AR app where you put on the glasses and you can see like the augmented reality of all the donors on all their clothes.
You can see the lobbyists standing behind them with their hands on their shoulders.
Like in an aura, just like floating above. You see like big pharma, big tech, defense contractors.
Yeah. That's actually a joke meme that came out, but is very, very... Should be like on their desk. You should see all the people that have donated to their behavior because they're supposed to represent their 700,000 constituents.
Well, it's the most insulting thing when you go try to persuade someone to change their viewpoint or to develop their viewpoint, and they literally refer you to the lobbyists. Like I've had that happen with colleagues where I'm like, hey, look, I really want to talk to you about this insurance issue. And they're like, okay, great. As soon as I hear from the State Farm and Allstate lobbyists that like your change is an appropriate one, then I can be with you.
That it sounds
And
like
it's
an
just
abdication of power.
It
Yeah,
totally
what
is.
was
Well,
this-
it's
what
so
was-
insulting to the member.
You mentioned before the show that people pay each other for sponsorship.
Well, I was discussing the dynamic on the House floor. So on the floor of the House of Representatives, members enjoy broad immunities as a consequence of the speech and debate clause, and giving each other political donations to campaigns is permissible on the floor. And so, I mean, you can observe dynamics where someone is, in one sentence, soliciting your vote or co-sponsorship, and then in the very next sentence is handing you a check.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.